So welcome everybody. Today I am here with James Nestor, the author of Breath, and we're going to go on an exploration. So I'd first off like to thank you, James, for taking the time to connect with the group here, to dive into all these intricacies of the breath and have an opportunity maybe for you to take a breather amidst the busy schedule you've been under amongst the massive success of this book. And really to start, I'd like to acknowledge you for your commitment and the work that you've done to really make this such a concise and potent, digestible material for those that have been perhaps in the breathing realm, in yoga or sport performance for many years, to somebody who maybe just caught wind of it and is interested to learn more. I really, in reflecting about this book coming out, and I'm just curious kind of what it's feeling like for you, having grown from writing Deep to then the inspiration to write Breath. And, you know, were you anticipating it to be so well received by the general public, to see the New York Times bestsellers, and we'll get into some of those other pieces as well. But I really, just thinking about it, that out of nowhere it seems like you've kind of jumped into being a steward of the breath, if you will, and just curious like what that feels like for you. And we'll just kind of roll here. So
well, thank you for that introduction. It's great to be here. I'm a little groggy, but I'm quickly waking up. You know, I would say I am by no means a steward of breathing at all. I'm a journalist who went into this world for years and tried to figure it out, talked to the experts in the field, spent a long time in labs, research facilities, trying to piece together this story. Because if you look at the literature, there's a zillion how-to books, and they're great, by the way. They're really helpful, but it didn't seem like there was a book that really took into consideration the, you know, the what, the where, the why we want to be doing this. So that's what I tried to, that's why the how-to of the book is, it's there, it's at the end, but you can get all that stuff free on the website. I thought the deeper story was how we breathe and how it affects all of us. So it's, you know, writing books, it's funny, you post some things on Instagram or whatever where you're traveling, like the glory shots of writing books, but writing books are here for 3 years, not really seeing anyone, grinding away. I love it. I love the solitude of it. And you never think that something like this is going to happen. I mean, these researchers I was talking to, they've been doing this research for decades, and they're getting zero attention from anybody. So they're thrilled. Obviously, I'm thrilled. But the last thing we thought was going to happen was that this was going to get traction. I was obligated contractually to release it in May. We weren't going to release it because of the pandemic, all that. And then we just figured, screw it, let's just do it and see what happens. And then we'll promote it for the paperback in a year. And it's been quite a whirlwind. So very grateful for that. And the best part of it is getting letters and hearing from people, you know, who have taped their mouths for one night, they're no longer snoring, who are now nasal breathing on their bike rides and having crazy performance, you know, gains. And so that to me is that this stuff is free. And so people, when they tune into it, they can really immediately see the benefits. It's not like a diet where you have to see the benefits in 7 weeks or 8 weeks. It's like you can see them within a couple minutes. And that's what I think is so powerful about it.
yeah, I agree. And just that felt experience, that it's so individual. It comes from you. The first thing you do when you're born, taking that breath, maybe the last thing you do as you leave this body or this place. And within that, then there's this collective. And what's been interesting to see are even the comments coming through from different podcasts, and seeing the short clips you've done with the experts around the Q&A, which has been so great, because it's like the breath wave got this volume starting to build, and then there's all these questions and people are curious, like, wow, how can I get started? Everybody's unique within what they're working with in their own life, from asthma to allergies. The sleep, it seems to be a very keystone here within people's lifestyle and with apnea and such. So those simple little things like going into the mouth tape portion, that all of a sudden, and I've heard these victories as well from people I work with one-on-one or in group settings, and even in my family I've noticed. Just on a side note, my brother and I will travel together sometimes, and when we're sharing a hotel room, I would always try and fall asleep before him because I would just be struck with this like resonant snore. And ever since he started really focusing on sleeping with his mouth shut, it's like a whole new world. And it's just so cool to see it happening, and each person really taking their own steps to direct the change.
Yeah.
And just within that sense of change, I loved how you firstly painted the picture through the chapters, and what really was inspiring to me was the evolutionary perspective from millions of years ago through the developments of the skull, and it's in the reflection I've thought about directional change. The only thing that doesn't change is change. So in what ways then do you want to change? And that's where this awareness and this practice can create a massive shift in terms of where the balance is currently in individual's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something I thought was interesting as well, is a lot of people don't want to feel responsible for their, not everybody, but a lot of people want to say, oh, it's genetics. Oh, I can't control that. That's just the way it is. It's just not true with so much, and especially when it comes to breathing, so much of airway health, even skeleture of your face, your posture. And so it's been interesting to find that how quickly it's sad and depressing what's happened to our species. I mean, just straight up it is. I mean, it's not natural for 10% of an animal to have diabetes and a quarter to have sleep apnea and lower back pain and migraines. Like there's nothing advantageous to our species to have that. But it's interesting how quickly those things come on and how quickly they can come off. And that was the underlying hum of this book. It's like, we're messed up, but we can also change this, and breathing has to be considered as in the forefront of doing this. You can eat well, you can exercise all the time, but you're still gonna be messed up if your breathing is messed up. And you see that all over the place. These very fit marathon runners who snore every night, who have sleep apnea. And it's just it's so devastating. And I think that science has been around down at Stanford. They've been studying this for 50 years. Christian Guillemot, so many books on this, so many studies from kids on up. And he even found that you don't even need to snore or have sleep apnea to suffer this stuff. Any resistance in your airway is going to cause you to struggle and cause you to stress. So this is a message. He's been flying the flag for decades, and nobody's been listening. So I really feel like there's some real awareness around that right now. And to me, when you look at sleep and sleep quality, it starts with breathing. The insomnia and psychological stuff is secondary to, if you don't have your breathing fixed out, you're never going to sleep well. It doesn't matter how many sleeping pills you take. That's actually going to make you worse, is what they're finding. There was this one study at the Mayo Clinic where half of the patients were put on antidepressants and sleeping pills, but it turned out they all had sleep apnea. So all of these pills were making that soft tissue even more saggy and making their sleeping worse. So it's like, what are we doing? Let's look at the science, let's look at the data and figure this out and try to help some people.
Get into the root cause. It's like perhaps in this more modern mind, modern times, it's easy to gravitate towards those quick fixes or that easy answer. I mean, I relate to that piece just from growing up in school. I struggled learning and reading, and so I always looked for, it became about getting the answer and doing it right. And over time, through some of this work as well, it's reconnecting back to your nature and restoring that shift from maybe being more in the front of your brain, thinking all the time, reasoning, analyzing. Like, we're professionals at that, but then can we feel and tap into these other layers of ourself and really allow for that freedom of expression away from suffering from sleep, and how that can impact our lifestyle and our way of being. So in terms of the sleep note, there's so many exciting things to chat about. I'm just like churning in my mind right now. Firstly, I come to the thought of dysfunctional patterns. I've been reflecting about breathing as a movement, and the way that we breathe is the way that we are, like the link from breathing and state, physiology, psychology. So if we look at breathing then as a movement, how free is that breathing? How free is that movement? Where are the restrictions? Where are we compensating, whether it's from an injury? Just before we started this, I was sharing with you about in 2015, riding my bike home from work, and I got slammed by this flash blue Mustang that was passing a bus, and I flew up onto the windshield, and I took massive impact on my right side. And I can still feel to some degree these compensations of that intensity inside from the fascia and the tissues in my body. And so those are these, unconsciously learned patterns, whether it's from an impact or from a traumatic experience socially, and how those show up in how we live our life from day to day. And so I'm thinking and reflecting about this theme of our patterning. So the pillars of patterns, looking at posture, gestures like me moving my hands, or how we, somebody says, oh, that's such a nice gesture, like whether maybe I give them breath as a gift. And then the final pillar that I reflect on or look into is your breathing. And so all this work and the practice to help restore that baseline freedom, fluid breath. And I think that speaks very clearly in terms of what you did with your investigative study around plugging the nose, mouth breathing, and then unplugging, and really seeing that clear data from what was a 1,000% increase in snoring within the first day, to then just the feelings waking up in the morning, energy-wise, clarity. I thought that was a great study. That was a small sample size. It'd be interesting to see with a larger cohort.
No one's gonna do that.
Yeah.
No,
I'm not down.
And he was even a bit sketched out that just two people were doing it. So, and that's why I had no intention of doing that. I did not want to do a sort of jackass stunt here, but no one else was going to do it, and he couldn't ask anyone to do it. So then I was finally just like, I'll do it. I don't want to, but like I'd prefer to report on it and to report on people doing this, but that's just not how it worked. So, it's funny, of course, it would have been great to have 400 people in that study, but I know they would have had the same response. I know that because there's so much science already showing that. We were just the sort of icing on the cake of what we've already known about snoring and sleep apnea and fatigue and blood pressure. Like, this stuff is known. And so to feel it in your body is a whole other thing. And it was an interesting thing to have in the book too, as a sidebar to the main story going on. But there's no money to do studies in breathing. Sorry, there's not. And a researcher at one of the top institutions in the world told me that the way the system's set up, they only have the ability to test drugs. They can't test therapies. This is what he told me, which, if you think about it, is one of the most depressing things I've heard. Here's some free stuff anyone can benefit from. Don't have the capacity to test that. So that's the reality. Luckily, people can do this stuff on their own, and we don't have to wait around for institutions to tell us what's right or what's wrong, because so much of that foundation of science is already there. It's good to know that Harvard just released a study on breathing. Yale just released a study on breathing. Stanford now has this new initiative on breathing with Andrew Huberman's taking this up. So it's moving now in a big way, and it's just going to buttress, to me, that foundation of what's already been really well set up by the leaders in the field.
Yeah, it's all coming together. I mean, that's the educational side, which I feel this book has been a massive contribution to. Even just provoking the idea for somebody to start digging into whether it's looking at Dr. Mew's work and just checking in with this positioning of their jaw and tongue and how that feels. Like sometimes, and maybe we'll explore that in the breathe today of just taking a breath with your mouth open. What does it feel like? So then shifting with your nose and just noticing all of these subtleties. Because some of the work can be very subtle, but therein it's a felt experience for you and very individual. And it makes me think of just pardon me, I'm just gonna mute somebody here. If everybody could just please make sure you're staying muted. My thought, James, as you mentioned with the studies around children is, this is the next generation. And I'm really excited to see how the educational platforms can help foster and bring this into the accessibility for young children so that they can be successful in their learning, in whether it's academically to then learning about themselves and having this connection to their inner nature, as I like to speak about, this work being very grounded in the principles of biology, the nervous system, this evolutionary potential theme that you hit very well in with the book. And so I'm excited and curious also to hear from you around what you think that future of the breathing practices are and the application into elementary schools perhaps, and the potential for shifting away from this more symptom-based driven band-aid, like taking an anxiety pill, versus learning how to really use your breath to regulate your nervous system and understand the triggers perhaps that keep us away from finding that freedom in ourselves.
Yeah, I think the first thing that needs to happen before you get into the minutia and the specific practices is that you have to take care of the breathing problems, which are so pronounced and so prevalent throughout so much of society right now. I'm talking about palatal problems, I'm talking about airway problems, I'm talking about infant snoring, infant sleep apnea. I just did an interview with a professor at Harvard who studies sleep apnea in kids, and it's so prevalent because our faces keep growing flatter and flatter and flatter with each generation. Our mouths keep growing smaller and smaller. So when you look at something like ADHD, there's a lot of researchers that are saying ADHD does not exist on its own. It is directly tied to sleep quality. And if you're snoring or have sleep apnea and are not breathing properly, that's where you get some neurological disorders, which is a crazy thing to say. But then you look at it, these kids who get their tonsils, that's extreme tonsils or adenoids, taken out to open their airway, they no longer have ADHD. And it's like, who is not putting together these pieces of this puzzle? These are people working at Harvard that are saying this. It's not just me. I'm reporting on what they've found. So, to me, that is the biggest thing. Look into traditional orthodontics, what we're doing to mouths, how we're taking a mouth that's this small and making it smaller at the end and collapsing the airway in. That's what so many researchers have been finding. I believe I'm certainly victim to that. When they took CAT scans, looked at my cranial base, and they're like, your face should be out here. But through headgear and extractions and all that crap I had when I was young, my airway is smaller. This is what they've said. This isn't my opinion. And they've done all the mathematical modeling of it. So I think that's going to take a lot of time. And once you have clear airways, then you can start building on the foundation of that, introducing breathing techniques and all that. I think a lot of people who have these problems immediately go to breathing techniques and say, oh, I'm going to do Kriya, I'm going to do pranayama. It's going to fix me. You got to take care of the airway, number one. And it's a steep order, but I really believe that there's a ton of awareness coming into that, especially in the orthodontics community right now, which is exciting. I mean, who spends the most time in your mouth? It's a dentist. So he should be looking at your airway and assessing what's wrong and trying to increase your airway size increase your palate instead of shrinking it down. That seems so logical to me. And yet we're still doing things the same way that we've been doing them for 70 years, you know, and not looking at airway health at all.
Yeah, I think that's really prevalent at the top of the list there, is looking at the mouth and seeing then, I mean, I never had braces or anything. I had my wisdom teeth out, and I actually had my tonsils out when I was in high school. I had some, I don't know if it was an autoimmune. I had a really intense psoriasis breakout with a flu, and just on the point of sickness and things we face as we're going through life. I can recall, like, growing up with strep throat. Every year I would get a terrible flu. I grew up in competitive alpine ski racing, and mid-season every year, it was like the peak. You've done your training, you're going to races, and things were starting to go well, and then I would get this debilitating flu, and I'd be out for a couple weeks, lose weight, and then be fighting to try and recover to finish the season. And it was every year, just cyclical, always getting this debilitating illness. And even then, at one point, living in Boston in the city, this was around 2013, I was still getting that winter flu, and I ended up getting pneumonia. So in terms of my breath journey, I resonated with you sharing about some of those personal things in what called you to start looking for, like, oh, well, how can I address these flowerings that are coming up? What's the root cause of these, and how can I start to make shifts? And ever since getting in, my breath journey really started with Ujjayi breathing in the yoga room, constricted resonant throat breathing, the glottis, and from there then opening up into practices like Wim Hof and other pranayama, to then breathwork, and I haven't gotten a flu like that since. I do focus a lot on my own nasal breathing and such, and open and use my mouth as well. So it's like finding those balances. I love even like looking at Wim Hof, who says, just, you know, breathe, motherfucker, get it in any hole, and making fun jokes like that and such too. That, you know, it's looking at where are things chronic mouth breathing with, like, sleep, as you said.
And that's what it is. You know, I'm getting so many emails of people who say, I was playing tennis and took 3 mouth breaths and now I don't feel well. And I'm just like, oh God, what have I done? This is about chronic mouth breathing. So I'm breathing through my mouth right now. I'm talking to you. Most of the breath is through my mouth. When I'm laughing, I'm breathing through my mouth. Sometimes Wim has you breathe through your mouth. There's nothing wrong with this, people. The point, I'm going to make this clear in the next edition. The point is chronic mouth breathing. When you're doing that, you know, 80% of the day, when you're doing that for a third of your life, every night, sleeping, that's a big problem. But breathing through your mouth, especially for a pranayama practice or for Wim Hof, this is, you know, 1% of the breaths you're going to be taking throughout your day. And it's not going to do anything. I surf a lot. I swim a lot at the beach. I'm breathing through my mouth the whole time. When I get out of the water, I go back to nasal breathing because I can't. There's salt water up your nose. So there's nothing wrong with this. People, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And a lot of Westerners are just like, I'm getting into breathing. I'm going all the way. This has to be a slow climb up and cut yourself some slack. You know, it's about relaxing, which is why, you know, at the end of the book, you look at all these different breathing techniques, Kriya, Wim Hof, the various pranayamas, Ujjayi. Like, to me, they're all coming to the same conclusion. They're all means to the same end, which is conscious breathing, getting your body back in balance, either by breathing really heavily or by breathing really slow for a long time. It's all doing the same thing, which is why I think they're all beneficial, you know, in their own specific ways.
Absolutely. That's like bringing it into this sense of having the awareness to know what state you're in. Is that where you want to be? And if not, or if so, what tool do you want to deploy from your breath toolkit, and that you can be adaptable and versatile using those tools. Like, you don't build a house with just a hammer, and whether you're a CEO and you need to be focused for that call, or you're a professional athlete, how do you execute in the moment and opening up the perspective, because, you know, there can be different personalities in camps that we, you know, go into one practice like I did with my yoga style, getting started with Baptiste yoga, power vinyasa in the heated room, sweating it out, to then all of a sudden I ended up jumping in ice baths and doing Wim Hof style breathing. And so two extremes, then kind of painting in the middle with different techniques and finding it's where what I've found, and if let me know what you think of this, is that it all becomes an intuitive sense. You have the awareness and the intuition to maneuver and navigate through life with internally with the nervous system and in connection to your outer nature.
Of course, and that's what breathing's so good at doing, right? You can immediately tune in to your body, and what's cool about it as well is you can tune your body into certain states. I mean, we know that all of the receptors down here in the lungs are feeding back signals to the brain. So the deeper you're going to be breathing, the more parasympathetic you're going to be getting, and that's what I think is so cool is it's this backwards, back and forth conversation between your brain and the rest of your bodies. But so much of that conversation is coming from your lungs and it's coming from your organs, and you're sending those messages to your brain to relax. And this is not some new age controversial stuff. This has been so well documented, looking at the nervous system, looking at how respiration really works. And if anyone doesn't believe it, and this is what I've told people before, take a breath into about a count of 2 and exhale for a count of 4 and check out what happens to your heart, you know, just when you're doing that. That's an instant relaxation response. And you just imagine if you can do that in a couple seconds, what'll happen to you when you do this for a couple weeks or a couple months. And we've seen these people overcoming emphysema, overcoming asthma, overcoming depression. I mean, sitting in an ice bath for 2 hours and not having your core temperature go down. Like, none of this is supposed to be possible, but no one's really has been looking at it. You know, they think that these people are daredevils or something. They're not looking at the basic physiology and what's tying all of this together, and it's breathing.
That's an interesting phenomenon with it, because I often hear with people, whether it's I'm too old, or, you know, I can't do this. It's when I'm walking around in public or in group setting, I love now just watching people breathe. And I invite as everybody tuning in as well to start just looking at that and noticing, like you're a scientist, just note, are they breathing through their mouth? Where is the location of the motion? And even right now, like as you've been listening now, and all of us tuned in for about half an hour, how has your breathing been? It's like, this is our intermission breath check. And have you been breathing through your nose or through your mouth? Maybe a little hybrid combo. Have you been sighing a lot? And how do you feel underlying? Do you feel stressed, or do you feel calm and connected? All of these different quantitative state words, not the subjective kind of emotional side of things that we also have capacity to as a human. But it's fascinating, and there's so many different pieces to go into. You've done such a fantastic job in many of the conversations I've tuned in and heard you speak to. And I'm curious also, just on a more personal note, if you're open to that, of what was it that drew you into becoming a writer? I grew up loving to write poetry. I sometimes struggle to write. I have dreams to write books. And then I find myself getting caught up in the thinking while I write. Just a side note there. But I really appreciate your perspective and what I feel the groundedness as a writer, the journalistic perspective, where you really just paint the picture clearly for somebody to make their own choice without, didn't seem like you were trying to force anything on anybody, say what's right or wrong, but just do such a beautiful job at that articulation. And curious where that all came from and how it came together.
Yeah, it came really out of happenstance. I never viewed myself as writing stuff for a living. I really didn't. And people say, "Oh, yeah, you did." I never thought of myself as that. But I had I was once a respectable citizen of corporate society. Had real jobs, writing stuff like magazine copy, advertisements, catalogs, that kind of thing, and it was going really well. I had a pretty good situation going on. And, but I wrote magazine stories on the side just because it was a process I really, really enjoyed. And those magazine stories eventually I found one story that I thought was worthy of a book and wrote a book. So it was this very organic process. But again, I have to make it clear to people that, you know, this is not the quill pen and the ascot sitting in a cabin somewhere. So much of writing is, this sounds so cliche, but you know, that 1% inspiration and then 99% perspiration. I'm not trying to, you know, make writers sound like martyrs. It beats digging a ditch or whatever, but it's a lot of lonely work, which you have to really enjoy, that solitude and just thinking about 24 hours a day. That's the only thing you're reading is the subject matter you're going to be writing about. The only thing you're talking about is the subject. And there's so much in life right now. We're torn to Twitter, Instagram, email, whatever. There's something very comforting to me to just be completely absorbed in one single subject. And, you know, I finished this book 8 months ago, and I kind of miss going back into that world. You know, it's great doing these interviews and stuff, but it's something thrilling having all these pieces and trying to fit it together in this puzzle that makes sense, not just to you, but that other people can relate to and understand. You know, that's the real trick.
Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Do you keep a journal, or is that where some of, like, when you went to Paris, for example, and then you started crawling down into those caves and checking out all the skulls and coming from that anthropological perspective, the evolution, the airways and all, the jaw, like what was it like to leave that experience and then go back to your hotel room, for example? Or do you take time after being in the lab or checking in on a certain topic to then do a free form flow where you just have notes and such that then you begin to write a chapter?
Sure. So I'm a obsessive note taker on these journeys. So I have a notepad. I also have my phone to do voice notes, to do dictation, which saves a lot of tendonitis. But the whole time I'm writing notes, the whole time you're taking pictures, visual cues. Then what I do after each interview is go back to my room, wherever I am, just dump it. And I'm not paying attention to any craft, just all of the minute details. Because what I've learned is what brings these scenes to life and these people to life is the specificity of detail that can really sum up their character, or what that feeling is. It's not about having more information, more adjectives. It's just a few light little flicks. And luckily these characters, I mean, every single person I interviewed, they were so easy to profile because they were just characters, in the best possible way. You know, they all had these quirks, which made them such strong personalities. So it was really fun. And what's another thing that's great is they're all my friends now. I talk to Nyack quite often. I was just talking to Ted Belfour all the time, talking to Mike Mew. And it's so that's really what you get out of this. After you write about these people and their work, then you've got this community to really move this thing forward in some positive ways. And that's what I think is special, to both have the book, but to also have this group of people. We don't agree on everything. And that's what, you know, Mike Mew said this, what do you think of that? People are just waiting for you to attack, you know, someone else for some, because that's just how our society is. Yeah, I don't agree with maybe 10% of Mike Mew says, but does that make me think he's a bad guy, or that 90% of what he's saying isn't legit? No, it's okay to disagree about stuff, you know, and still look at the general push that's behind all this, and the general incentive to get everybody tuned into this. And that's the key. Instead of trying to rip each other apart over these minute little differences, like, what are we doing? The point is to push it forward. So.
And that's where it seemed, I feel like that's where things are moving. Like there's more cohesion in the breathwork community and the greater public that's coming into this. And so just for everybody that's tuning in, I think that's an important piece of this puzzle as well, is that collaborative sense, looking at then even from science and personalities of just individuals, and how, you know, we have our sense of righteousness about what is the best, for example, or just how we should be practicing, or different intricacies within that, but then underlying that everybody can be collaboratively learning and growing, putting this stuff to the test. As I like to say, backed by science and tested in nature. So getting the data and then getting out in the field and getting messy and seeing how it shows up.
I do think one important quick little point I want to make also that people need to acknowledge is that science is not a closed book. Just because a textbook comes out doesn't mean that, okay, that's what we know about the subject, let's move on. And so much, not so much, a lot of medicine works by that. But science is constantly evolving. So if you look at medicine, I was told this by a doctor, he said 50% of what we thought we knew was right about medicine in the past has been proven wrong. And we know that. Right now, 50% of what we think we know about medicine right now will be proven wrong in about 20 years. So this isn't to fault anyone or to point fingers at anyone. It's to say, hey, let's work together. We'll acknowledge that we haven't done things right in the past, and let's move on, and not blame anyone for putting braces on you, you know, not blame anyone for treating you in a specific way. But to say this thing is constantly moving, and it's important for scientists and researchers to really acknowledge that too. Something they might have said 30 years ago may be proven wrong, and that's okay. You can learn from that and keep pushing things forward, I think, is the real key.
Yeah, which Wim was a part of that train as well, because the biology books all talked about the autonomic nervous system, and then here he comes out of nowhere and shows that conscious regulation.
Yeah, and I've been, you know, I've gotten so much support. It's been so awesome. But of course, there's haters that are saying that his test is not proven. The autonomic nervous system cannot be manipulated. Immune function cannot. I mean, these are researchers saying this stuff who don't bother to look at the new science of what's going on. His study was published in Nature. This is peer review. This is like the top of the top. And so you can pay attention to that noise. You can just say, here are the studies, you know, and we have to evolve our thinking here. But a lot of people, you know, they feel like if they've done something for the past 50 years, they don't want to be told they're now doing it wrong, especially by someone like Wim. You know, they're like, I'm not going to believe this guy. It's, well, you don't have to believe him, but believe the other scientists working with him, and believe all the scientists that peer reviewed that study. So anyway, you can go down that road. I really try not to, because that's why I put all 500 references to the book are available for free on the site. All the top researchers are there doing these expert Q&As, and you don't agree with it. That's cool. That's fine. But you know, all you can do is put it out there and allow people to go into it if they choose to.
Yeah, put it to the test, and we will in just a few put some of that to the test, and we can have a chance collectively to try it out, and we'll go through what I like to call the multidisciplinary type of breath journey, breath practice, where, you know, some rhythmical breathing to then a little bit of superventilation, Wim Hof style, playing with the bandwidth of the chemistry from getting very alkaline, blowing off the CO2, to also really engaging into CO2. And I think I just saw in the chat box somebody referencing that CO2 tolerance, and building our floor and ceiling for the sensitivity around it, and just seeing, which all of this is really well addressed in the book. And I think one of my favorite parts is that research with Feinstein going into that, the CO2 mask, and just getting and learning into these deeper subtleties of the body with the chemoreceptors to the brainstem, and implications for anxiety, like, yeah, unbelievable.
And here's a guy that's funded by the National Institutes of Health. I wouldn't consider that sketchy. You know, he's not some dude in his garage in you know, Arizona or something. And so what he's going to discover, my prediction, if I'm seeing in the future, he's going to change so much of what we know about anxiety by looking at the physiology, not looking at the psychology. And it's so exciting what he's working on. And I'm going to be updating the book for the paperback, comes out in about a year from now, because so much is happening. All this stuff is gestating, and I want to make it as current as possible. So hopefully I'll go back out there and figure out what he's learned since I last reported on him.
Excellent. Yeah, I was curious in terms of Q&A type of stuff. One thought within how the perspective, as I mentioned, breathing as movement and looking at the physiology, I've been very inspired around the fascia networks, the fascial networks of the body, stuff that I'm going to continuously be learning about as I always will be. I'm looking to, this is a learning for life type of endeavor here. And the body's so complex. So, pardon me. And I was curious if anything came up specifically in your research, or there was any things that came up around fascia, because I think there's really an interesting conversation to go into there, looking at the interconnectedness of the pelvic floor with the psoas, the quadratus lumborum in the back to the transversus abdominis, all interconnecting to the diaphragm. And that it seems as if lately a lot of conversation is about the diaphragm, getting diaphragmatic breathing going and all this. You reference low back pain and stuff, and you'll see it in like a session where someone's like, "Oh, my back or my neck doesn't hurt." And so a lot of stuff I've been implementing one-on-one and in groups, in the not so much these days because we're not in person, but is adding tools for self-release. So this is a shout out to Jill Miller. I'm not sure if she's on here, but it's called the Gorgeous Ball, dude. And it's a fleshy, air-filled ball that really effectively manipulates those layers of fascia. And you can do target breathing and different exercises around it, from contract, release, and allowing yourself to self-release and soften into these fascial networks, wherein, maybe there's a hang up down in the pelvic floor and it's restricting those lowest ribs, 13, 12, and 11 or so, from really allowing that pelvic floor and intra-abdominal breath to occur. So I was just curious to ask you about that, because I think there's really a lot in there. And
fortuitous question here. I just 2 days ago had a conversation with a researcher who was looking into diaphragmatic movement and lymph function. And she absolutely blew my mind. As I was talking to her, I said, "You have to come, let's do a Zoom thing, put it up for everyone." So I've hopefully convinced her to run a workshop on this stuff that will include breathing, diaphragmatic movements, and also her whole rundown of this. Like, it completely blew me away. I wish I had this in the book, and I'm going to revise it to have it in. But what she's saying basically is, if you look at the anatomy, most of the diaphragm is connected to our back, not our front. So that diaphragmatic movement shouldn't so much be with your stomach. You have to be engaging the back. And she had me do these exercises where I was lying flat on my back, my legs were up on a sofa, and she was having me breathe. I've never felt anything like it. You feel all of this starting to wake up. And she was explaining that when we have a large diaphragmatic movement, we're able to softly massage our organs, which allows them to secrete more lymph fluid. And as we breathe up and breathe in again, we're pushing that lymph fluid up and out of our bodies. So this is a way to detoxify the body, not, again, in any new age way. This is the physiology of how our bodies work. So by not having that diaphragmatic movement, we're not engaging that. We're allowing that lymph fluid to just stay down there and coagulate. So this was a different, like the biomechanics of breathing, not only the biochemistry of it, blew my mind. So that's hopefully coming up. I told her, she's a little shy. I said, "Please, let's just do this. We'll just give it away to people. People can log on and have this session," because I thought it was so powerful.
yeah, there's really something there. I've been very inspired. I mentioned Jill Miller, and then I saw her hop in the chat. So shout out to you, Jill, and everything with the self-release balls. This Gorgeous has really been like an absolute game changer for my own personal practice and what the feedback that I'm seeing with people individually. Her company is called Yoga Tune Up. That's what these balls are. I know she's also quite keen to have a chat with you probably.
Sure.
A gentleman up in Maine, his name's Tom Myers. He's a fantastic and incredible expert with the body, doing dissections. The anatomy trains is what his brand is, and it's around this interconnected and this holistic approach of the body that, you know, anatomy's been about separation. We're looking at different areas, but actually this layer of fascia connects everything.
Yeah.
And if one of our psoas is tight, then it's pulling on that right hemidiaphragm, and then we're compensating and twisting. And it's just incredible that you could look at a body map and see, oh, okay, well, we can work these different zones and allow then for the movement to be fluid, the glide, and that then the breathing is free. So then you can have that feeling of being free and not like you're in a straitjacket. So exciting stuff. There's just some random thoughts here, but curious as to if you had anything specific you were planning to add in for the revised edition.
Yeah, and I am. This was a new area. I did not get into it too deeply. I got into it a little bit with the Carl Stow, the emphysemics who had lost all diaphragmatic movement, which is why they breathe, and just how transformative it was just to engage their diaphragms. These people walked out of a hospital. It's like, duh. And now no one's doing that for people. So I got into that, but the whole lymph function, I did not. It was getting a little too far out in the weeds, but it is definitely the next thing I'm going into to learn more about this. I'm fascinated by it. I want to include it, you know, at least a little overview of how that functions, a little more of the biomechanics of that. You know, I had a lot to cover in the book, so 90% of that book was cut. You know, when you're talking about something that's been around for 5,000 years and all these different tangents, and I'm not gonna, the new edition's not gonna be huge, but I do want to have some more things about, a little more about exhalation and diaphragmatic movement and CO2 is what I'm planning on right now.
Some good key points there.
Yeah.
Yeah, the lymph is great. I've been inspired in that sense as well. But on Instagram, Dr. Terry, he's Stop Chasing Pain is his tag. And he's highlighted in some diagrams showing like the biggest lymph node in our body is right under the diaphragm. So if we think about that pump, sometimes, not to be crude in any way, but I think of the diaphragm sometimes as like a toilet plunger. So, you know, things get clogged up. If it's not moving smoothly, then we got to address that and get in there and let it flow freely, so that digestion, lymphatic, blood flow, it's all connected. And though they're individual systems, there's still this whole network that is whole. So
I'm just taking notes here. Don't mind me.
No worries. I can direct message you that page if you want to check it out.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, sure.
It's cool to see how everything just opens up, and that's what I really love and want to acknowledge within the community, and you as a part of that, and also a leader in it, though humble as we started saying, I'm not a steward of breath. You're just a curious journalist, and I really love to see how you've been able to captivate this and bring it. But
it's an important point, because I came into this field completely objective. I had no, you know, if I found out that mouth breathing was really healthy for you, I'd have probably a more interesting book. Say the ancients have been totally wrong. It's mouth breathing, people. This is the thing. But that's not my role. And it's so important to separate yourself from having a mission and an objective, to just want to be completely clear about this stuff. And that's something I take really seriously. You know, you can't help becoming a little emotionally involved with some of this subject, where you're just like, why is nobody doing this? Why is nobody talking about this? This stuff's been studied. This guy has 250 papers on this, that it all checks out. So, you know, you get a little confounded here and there, but nonetheless, I was lucky enough to be able to insert myself within this community as this wave was coming up, and report on it. And that's all I was doing. You know, I do not want to be an evangelist for this stuff. I want to be an objective reporter on all the people that are actually doing the good work here and have spent their whole lifetime dedicated to this research.
Yeah. Do you have a process for that then within the objective approach? Like when you notice yourself in writing, like getting into a tangent that maybe is more like from an emotional side, do you just scratch that and how?
Of course, what you do is you write it out, but you have to be self-correcting the whole time. Luckily, I have one of the most hard-assed editors at Penguin, Courtney Young, where she doesn't believe, she's so, you know, she worked at NASA before becoming an editor. So every single thing I brought to her, she said, bullshit, 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 prove it, prove it, prove it. So I had to first prove it to her that I said, here's the studies, here are the specific numbers. And I really want an editor like that who was going to just call BS on everything. And once I got her to be like, oh my God, okay, yeah, this is right. Then you have two fact checkers on top of that who are fact checking every single line of everything. Because I knew these claims are outrageous. And if this thing wasn't perfectly buttoned up, anyone's going to find any excuse to be like, oh, this is bullshit. Oh, this is flimsy. Then I had another editor, Alex Hurd at Outside Magazine. I hired him because I've worked with him for forever to read it and to focus that. So they're able to remove all that. I mean, I'm conscious of it to begin with, especially with a subject like this. If you're writing about quantum mechanics or something that's not as close to people, you know, that's not so, and let's be honest, like a lot of breathing is, some of the info out there is sketchy. It's not science backed. There's some hucksters out there selling BS. There's a lot of that. So you have to be very, very careful about the story you're telling and the science you're using, which is why I stuck to institutions like Harvard, which is why I did so much work at Stanford. It's like, you can rip on me, but you have a hard time ripping on these guys at Stanford. They're not putting out BS studies, you know. So I think that's the real key. It depends on the subject matter, you know. And I knew that you know, it can be a hot button topic for a lot of people. And the claims are crazy that you can improve your breathing, help overcome autoimmune problems, help overcome asthma, help overcome sleep apnea, hypertension. But the science is so clear, you know. Once you those are crazy claims off the top. People don't believe them, but see for yourself, you know.
Absolutely. And maybe that's a good segue for us to take a short breather together. I want to be sensitive to your time too. So if you're down for a little breathe with the group, which I'll guide everyone through. And
is this the sitting up, laying down thing?
Well, yes, good transition. If people want to be seated, they can. If you've been practicing and you feel comfortable seated, you're welcome to stay seated, whether that's on a meditation cushion or a block, or in a chair, reclining slightly. Or if you'd like to lay down, for everyone listening here, that really creating your own space so that you can feel comfortable and bringing your focus into your body and breath for this exploration.
I'm going to lay down here so you can just look at my bookshelf.
Right on. When I guide the breathes, I shift it to the gallery view because I just love to see everybody's face. So I'm going to take a moment for that too, because it's just always a treat to be here with everybody. Some who I know very well and some who are joining us for the first time. So thank you all for being here. And so we're going to explore a short breathing session within the themes of some of which are in the book. So if you've read the book, this can be an opportunity to start trying out some of the practices. If you've been practicing, it's great to be here with a group and breathe. And so just take a moment to get yourself settled and create your comfortable space. Maybe you put a pillow under your head, that could be nice. And just as we get started here, this is a dedicated time that we're practicing in a safe environment. So you're not driving a car. You're not using these techniques specifically to go out and then dive underwater and hold your breath. This is a time where you focus solely on your breathing in a comfortable, safe environment. You're not near anything sharp. Really, that underlying safety of the practice is that you create that environment so that you don't have to, I'm just trying to mute somebody here, so that you can really focus on the experience. So I invite you into that and just remind you to always be safe and to not force the practice. You may notice that through some of the technique we do, you're going to feel a little bit tingly, maybe a little buzzy. All of these things are normal, and we could talk about that after the breathing session. Maybe you'll feel any resistance in your body or emotionally. Every breathing session can be unique and different. So just having this open mind around allowing whatever you're going to feel or experience during this breathing session. So let's get started. And whether you're seated or laying down, just check in with yourself, take any little adjustments you need, just to bring that overall sense of your body feeling supported. You can ask yourself, do I feel supported? If that answer is no, then you can make a little shift, find that support, create that support. And let's get started slowly with the practice of breath awareness. So as you're ready, you can close your eyes. And just give yourself a moment to check in. Maybe you bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your chest area. And allow breath awareness simply to be an opportunity to step back, to be an observer of all these different layers of you. Feel your physical body, the support of the cushion or the floor, the chair that you're connected to. Maybe you feel the breeze on your skin or the sunlight. And shift your focus inward and see, can you locate your heartbeat somewhere on your body? Just taking a few moments to scan. How do you feel energetically? Do you feel tired? Do you feel anxious or anticipating what's to come for the day? And then within that scan, just check in. How have you been breathing? Do you feel like you're breathing in and out quickly? Is it a higher breath frequency? Where does the breath feel like it is moving or happening? Through breath awareness, just let it run. Let the breath run. Not trying to manipulate it in any way. You can tell yourself as you observe this process, connecting to watch the breath move, that when you bring your awareness to your breath, that you're at home. The feeling of connection, safety, comfort. You're at home with your breath. Just take a smooth, full inhalation through your nose. Just draw it in, whatever way it wants to flow. Hold it for a moment at the top. And through your mouth, just let it spill out. Let it drop, let it drain. Not trying to do anything fancy to get started. And Let's do a brief scan through the body. So take your hands, whether you're seated or laying down, you can do this. And place your hands like a breath sandwich. Place your thumbs towards your mid-back and wrap your fingers around your belly. You're just embracing your sides. With your thumbs, massage your back. Notice and locate your ribs. So these are your lowest ribs. 13th rib all the way at the bottom. It's a floating rib. Your 12th rib is floating. Just massage those for a moment with your thumbs. These are the roots of breath, where all these fascia and tissues connected. I want these ribs to move freely. These are the pelvic ribs, the pelvic rib cage zone. Put a little pressure onto those ribs with your hands. Keep that pressure, and through your nose, take a big breath in. Draw it low into the pelvic region. Hold it for a moment at the top. You can contract slightly. All your focus to the pelvic region. And then release any contraction and let the breath spill out. Really nice. And slowly walk your hands a little bit higher up to the abdominal rib cage region. 4 ribs in this zone. You could be meticulous and count the ribs with your fingers. Just explore around. It's all an exploration of your own physical body. You can press between the ribs. Just check in. Does anything feel restricted? Put a little pressure into this abdominal zone. Take a breath in here. Expand into that pressure from the inside out. Hold it, contract, and then let it go. Soften with your exhale. And then slowly work your way up towards your armpit, chest, rib cage zone. You could give yourself a hug or pop your elbows out. Just a moment to massage here, to investigate and check in. And put pressure into that chest rib cage zone. Take a full breath in. Hold it, press, express from the inside, and let your breath go. Really nice. And finally, all the way up. We're going all the way up. You can wrap your fingers around your collarbones like a monkey hanging onto a branch. Just check in there and also begin to massage just some of the sheaths and muscle in your neck. All these scalene muscles and fascia here connect to their upper 2 ribs. So these are like the branches of the breath tree. Just checking in. Does it feel tight, tender? Nice. And settle. Bring your shoulders up towards your ears. Hold it. Create a little tension into your neck and shoulder region without torquing it. Take a breath in here. Pause. And as you exhale, drop your shoulders away from your ears. Let it go. Really nice. Back to breath awareness. Just take a moment. Just check in. Has anything shifted? Just from bringing your attention to these 4 different zones in your physiology. Notice where your attention goes, what sensations are with you, and how the breath's moving now. So we're going to get into some breath rhythms now. So if you need to adjust, just make yourself comfortable. And let's get started with a protocol you can practice and use on the road. So this could be an online tool. It'll be the double inhale and a long exhale through your mouth. Activate the psi neurons. It's a study that Huberman's doing at Stanford, and we'll get some info about that soon. So if you'd like, close your eyes, and through your nose, take a full sweeping inhale all the way up. When you're full, pause for a moment, take another sip in, and then let it go through your mouth. Just try 5 breaths like that. 100% inhalation. Once you've hit that peak volume, take another little sip in. and then burst it out. Slow motion all the way to the bottom. There's no rush. And sweep the inhale again, 100% in. And a little sip. Burst it out. A few more. You can go at your own pace. It's not a race. Just savor the breath in. Peak volume, and then pack the air in. A little sip. Let it go. Beautiful. Let's do one more like that. 100%. Draw it low all the way up. Take a sip and burst. Just take a moment. Has anything shifted? Is there a different quality of focus? Let's just nudge the breath a little bit. We'll open it up. Check out the inhalation and the exhale. So take an extra full inhale. Hold it at the top for a moment. Just notice there's contraction, there's expansion for the volume to create this draw of breath into your lungs. Hold it for a moment. Feel that from the inside out. And then just let go, like you're taking your finger off a button. You're not pushing the air. Just feel the recoil. This is a passive exhale. The breath just spills out. Let's try that one more time. So extra full 100% inhalation with a pause at the top. Oh, good morning. And just let go. Watch the body relax and the breath flow out from the change in volume. Really nice. Let's take it to the exhale now. You can take a small sip in and then push all the air out. Exhale, narrow squeeze from your side body, front and back. Empty all the air. Push it out, empty, empty, all the way. Every last little drop, get it out. Same element, like you're taking your finger off a button. Release contractions and watch the recoil, the allowing of the inhalation to just spill in. And then one more like that. Exhale, squeeze all the air out. Empty. Pause at empty for a moment. And then just let it go. Watch the air spill. And relax. Just playing around with some introductory themes. Focus on these 4 zones as we get into the breath now, from the pelvic, abdominal, chest, all the way up into the neck. Let's get started with some box breathing. Be a simple box shape of the breath. We'll inhale for 4, hold at the top for 4, exhale for 4, and then hold at the bottom for 4. If some of this is new to you, just go with the flow. We're gonna get into some rounds of breath now, and just do your best. Open mind. It's all inside. So if you can, do this only in and out through your nose. So exhale, and let's get started. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the top, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Nice focus. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold. Expand from the inside out. Exhale, now narrow, empty. Pause at the bottom. Give yourself permission to be patient. There's no rush. 2 more rounds. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Nice work. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold at the bottom. Last round incoming. Bring your focus into it. Everything you've got. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Hold, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, narrow, empty. Pause at the bottom. And then allow the breath in. Just return to your normal breathing rhythm. Check in for a moment. Let's get into some super ventilation. We'll take about 30 breaths, Wim Hof style. And let's start in and out through the nose only. We'll work through some breath gears. So maybe you reset, put one hand on your belly, one on your chest. And then through your nose, breathe into your lower hand. Expand your belly, pelvic and abdominal region. Nice. Then expand your chest and upper rib region. Through your nose, just let it go. So build a breath wave like that. Fully in, belly, chest, and let it go. No rush, just getting into it. The bottom, pick it right up. When you hit the top, let it go. Just taking your finger off the button. It's like you're sighing out of your nose. The bottom, pick it right up again. So as you start to get the rhythm of the breath going, this is the theme of conscious connected breathing, or as James calls, breathing plus. We're going to start to build a rhythm and shift chemistry in the body. You're going to become more alkaline just by offloading CO2 every breath. Visualize a circle inside. The breath is a circle. It's rhythmical and connected. No pause between the inhale to the exhale. Find your groove to fluidly move. Maybe a little bit of motion in your body from your pelvic floor, your pelvis, through your spine. If that movement feels good, then just invite it in. Play. Halfway there for the round. In. Out. In. Out. Nice and smooth. Notice where any excess tension's showing up in your body. Locate it at the peak of your inhale, and then practice letting it go with your exhale. 10 more breaths. 9. 8. Are you holding any tension in your tongue? 7. Any excess tension in your face? 6. You've got it. 5. Create a 360-degree breath. Expansion from the front, sides, back. 3 more breaths, and then we're going to take an exhale hold. We'll all stay together for the first few rounds. 2. 1. And one more. Full inhalation. Pause for a moment at the top. And then gently just let it spill out. Like you pull the plug of the bathtub and the water just drains out. Let it drain to the bottom effortlessly. Don't push it all out. And then pause. I'll do a short hold here. Start to tune in to the subtle sensations. Maybe you feel a little bit buzzy. The body's feeling primed. It's the alkaline state wherein you've offloaded CO2 in your system. So the stimulus to breathe isn't provoked as quickly because, as we know, the CO2 is what communicates to the brain that it's time to take a breath. So pay attention to that space now as we hold for another 10 seconds. How do you interact, respond, or react to that signal to breathe? 3, 2, recovery breath through your nose. Take a full inhalation. Hold it at the top. Pause. You can squeeze from your pelvic floor and press gently up towards your head. No force, or contract somewhere in your body if you feel like excess tension or there's an injury that you're looking to draw blood to. Create that contraction. Hold it for 3, 2, and release any contraction. Let the breath spill out. And right into the next round. Just like that. 30 breaths. Let's do in through the nose, out through your nose. 5 breaths like that. In, out. Remember, you're in control. In, regulating airflow. 3. Starting slow, moving breath in and out through your nose, and then we'll explore and investigate the different modes of breath. Or is there excess tension showing up in your breathing? Just let it be. Let's shift. In nose, out mouth. And we flow. In, out, in, and let it go. It's like bouncing a ball. As soon as you drop that exhale, pick the inhale right up. Let it sweep like a wave that builds to a peak, and then let it crash. Rolling. Fluid like water. How smooth can you make your breath? So it's not rigid and forceful. Notice that the more and more ease that you invite into the process, the easier that you try, the more powerful your breathing can become. In through your nose, out through your mouth. You may notice you're starting to feel a little buzzy. You're intentionally building up a hyper-aroused state in your body, consciously training yourself to build the sensitivity to stressful experiences externally, by having this relationship and understanding resistance internally. If it starts to feel overwhelming, you can just slow it down. You're always in control. 10 more breaths. 9, 8. Circular, rhythmical pattern. You can sigh, maybe let out a noise with your exhale if that feels good. All different ways to explore, like, how can I let this expression be free and nurturing, uniquely right here and now. Your body, your breath. 5 more, and then we'll take a retention. 4, 3, 2, 1. Belly soft, embrace the inhalation. Last one together, fully in. And once you hit the top, just let it spill, like you pop a bubble and the air just disperses. Let it pause at the bottom. Give yourself permission just to be right here at the bottom of an exhale. Let your mind run. Maybe you notice you don't even feel that urge to breathe yet. What sensations can you tune into internally? Bring your attention inward and locate your heartbeat. Let's hold for another 15 seconds. If your mind's wandered off and you maybe took a breath, you can exhale and join us again in the retention. 5 seconds. 3, 2. Recovery breath, smooth, fully in. Take your time, embrace the process. Pelvic, abdominal, chest, all the way up to your head, like you're taking a breath into your entire body. Hold it at the top. Holding for 5, 4, 3, 2, and burst. Let the air spill out. One more round of superventilation style. We'll do 10 breaths nose only, 10 breaths mouth nose, and then mouth mouth. So let's start together. In and out through your nose. In, out. No rush. If you need to breathe a little slower, you're intuitive. Giving yourself the space you need to connect inward, to regulate, to tune into whatever emotions, whatever feelings or thoughts that are coming up in the experience. Just watch and witness them. Allow yourself just to be present to everything, even the resistance. 5 more breaths, nasal only. Can you nudge the inhalation a little bit deeper? Notice how the inhalation begins with pressurization in the abdominal, the pelvic floor region, and then your rib cage flares out. It's the operation of the diaphragm. The musculature pulls down, and then the top, the dome, draws the rib cage outward. Okay, let's shift. In nose, out mouth. Ride in the breath train. In, out. Notice here, what does it feel like to shift and now be exhaling through your mouth? As you ride this superventilation train, is there any excess tension that shows up in your neck, your shoulders, your face? Notice it. Let the inhale be revealing of where there is excess. Excess tension, excess effort. Remember, try easy. Try easy. And then, as you locate it, practice letting it go with the exhale. 5 more breaths in and out, nose, mouth. 4. Meet yourself where you are. 3. 2. 1. Okay, shifting. Mouth in, mouth out. 10 breaths here. Experiment. Maybe you have pursed lips and that's how you play with your inhalation. A few breaths like that. Or maybe you lax your jaw and you breathe into the back of your throat. So you notice there's so many different ways to play with the breath whilst keeping it conscious and connected. So the wheel continues to be in motion. 5 more breaths, mouth only. Notice, does your mouth start to feel a little more dry? That's how maybe it would show up through the day if we're unconsciously mouth breathing. Move the air. Engage with the stimuli, the tingliness if it's starting to build up. You're a conscious captain, shifting chemistry all through your breathing, becoming alkaline as you offload more CO2 in your body and increasing a hyper-aroused state so you can engage consciously with stress. Change the relationship. Okay, now getting set for retention. 5 more breaths. You can stay with mouth if you'd like, or downshift in nose, out mouth. Smooth, in the groove. 3 more, let's slow them down so that you can go into your retention with a slower heartbeat. 2, in a more parasympathetic tone. You can really savor the exhale hold. 1, long and slow, no rush. And last one together, fully in. You can pause for a moment if you'd like. And let the bubble pop. The exhale spill. And at the bottom, pause. This exhale hold be an opportunity to practice patience. So you're not rushing from the next thing. Listen in for the little whispers that speak in sensation and feeling. It's the language of the body. Meditation as a practice of listening. Notice the sounds you hear, whether it's the music or my voice, sounds in your home. We'll stay together for the exhale holds. If you're in your practice and you want to stay a little longer, you're welcome to. If you need your recovery breath, you can take that. Or hold for 5, 4, 3, 2. And as you're ready, recovery breath, fully in and hold. Pause in the suspension. Let your mind fly free. You can press blood up towards your head, squeeze somewhere in your body, create a peak of pressurization without force for 5, 4, 3, 2, and let it go. Just drop it. Slow motion. We'll explore one more practice. It's called maximal minimal breathing. So we're going to start breathing at about 100% volume and then start to work our way down to a secret ninja mode breath. So just follow along, do your best. Let's begin with 100% breath. Through your nose, fill your pelvic floor, pelvis region, abdominal zone, chest, all the way up. You can even over-exaggerate, puff your chest up, and then through your mouth, push the air out, empty, narrow squeeze. 5 breaths like that. 100% in, and push it out. Just like we started exploring in the beginning of the practice. In. The active exhalation, so you engage and recruit that musculature to squeeze and narrow the torso, narrow the chest cavity so the volume shifts and you push the air out. 3 more. 2. No force, remember, try easy. Last one at 100%, in, out. Nice work. We'll shift to 75% now. Just visualize through your nose, breathe into your pelvic zone, then your abdominal, and chest. Around armpit, nipple height. And through your mouth, just passive exhalation. Let it go. Not pushing or forcing any air out. Nice. 5 breaths like that. So sweep from low. And visualize about 75% breath. Through your mouth, passive spill. Just take the finger off the button. In. So it's like you're an artist with the breath. And out. In. And out. Passive exhale. Just let it spill. 2 more. 75% breath. Out. Notice the shifts as we start to move through the gears. 75. Let it drop. Now to 50% breath. So through your nose, inhale to the pelvic zone, then only to the abdominal. Through your nose, exhale. So we're shifting to nasal only breathing now. 5 breaths at 50%. Pelvic, abdominal, and then passive exhale. Beautiful. In. Just visualize in your mind's eye that you're breathing just above your belly button, taking the breath just in this low zone. 3 more here. Underlying, does it feel like it's more easeful, more of a grounding breath to be breathing in this home zone? 2. 50%. No right or wrong, just playing around with the breath. Last one at 50%. So feel that pressurization and a light flare of your lower ribs. Just let it go. It's like a dance of the diaphragm. Let's shift now to 25% breath. So you're targeting the pressurization just into the pelvic zone. In through your nose, pressurize low. And through your nose, exhale. 5 breaths here. Things are starting to really slow down. Gentle, subtle movement. You could even bring your hands to your lowest pelvic region zone. Just as a reminder. Oh, okay. Pressure, expand from the inside out. Nice and smooth, a silky breath. 25% volume. Let's do one more. 25% breath in. And let it spill. Now we fall into the secret ninja mode breathing. So in and out through your nose. Just take a small little sip in, and then extend your exhalation for about 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. And then tiny little sip in. Extend the exhale long. So what you're doing is starting to fall into this minimal style of breath. We've explored 100% breathing, really moving the air, to now bringing your focus into this secret with you and the breath, so that anybody watching you, they almost wouldn't even notice that you're breathing because it's so gentle, so subtle. You may notice already that you're starting to feel an urge to breathe. Continue to extend the exhalations. Maybe 5 seconds is a measure that works, and you can be in a tolerable state there whilst maintaining that little sip of air. Visualize the air is moving so slow that it wouldn't even disrupt the hairs inside your nose. Or that if we put a feather under your nose, that it wouldn't even ruffle the feather. That was a measure that the samurais used to check in with the tribe around how masterful they were with their breath. Keep up, keep it on, keep it up. I'm gonna go for about another minute with the minimal breathing. If you're in a sweet spot, you're noticing the urge to breathe, that is an intentional piece of what we're doing by slowing the breath down here. You're provoking the CO2, building CO2 in your body, and that is the signal, the molecule that's signaling your brain to say, hey, it's time to take a breath. About 30 seconds. Engage with that signal, that communication, that maybe percolating feeling of urgency to breathe. Continue to control just a small little sip in and skate the exhale long. Really nice. Stay with the focus. Maybe you're getting into a higher state, that red line where it's really starting to feel a little uncomfortable. You can regulate it. You maybe take a little bit of a bigger sip in, or even feel your diaphragm try and jerk you to take a breath. Stay with the regulation. 5 seconds. This is a training right here. Building tolerance for CO2. Building a greater quality for oxygen delivery to the body. Okay, right back up to 100% breath through your nose. In. Through your mouth, push it out. 3 breaths here. Let's just offload and blow that CO2. One more 100% breath. And then back to nasal only. Let's go to 50% breathing. So in, pelvic, abdominal, and out. 3 breaths here. In. 50% breath. Artistically, creatively playing with it. Nice. Last one at 50%. And nice and easy out. Just tuning into that fluid movement of breath. Skate it back into the under breathe. Just a little sip in, long exhalation. You start with 5 seconds. Practice that little sip and skate it long. Keep your focus. One of the key factors is conscious breath and the mind that you bring into the experience. Notice the signals, the sensation, maybe heat even building in your body as the CO2 starts to build up inside. Notice the perceptions. Does it feel somewhat scary? Like, oh my God, I need to breathe. This is a primordial stress response, one of the deepest. So you're consciously engaging with these powerful signals in the body. Let's do another 30 seconds of under breathing. Play your edge. Notice When you extend your exhale a little bit longer, does that really start to percolate the urge to breathe? Kick your diaphragm into a jerk motion to try and take that breath. Extend a little further. Find that growing edge where you go a little bit beyond what you think is possible. Find a little more surrender amidst the challenge. Even the squirmy feeling that may come up of like, oh, I want to take the breath. 5 seconds. Find your edge. Exploring. And when you're ready, smooth inhalation to recover all the way in. Focus on the process, pelvic, abdominal, chest, uppermost branches. Hold it for a moment at the top. Scan through your body as you hold your breath. Where is excess tension showing up? Locate it, connect to it. You can contract that region. Holding for 3, 2, release the contraction, exhale, soften. Let it spill, let it drop. For the last few moments, just fall back into breath awareness. Stay where you are. And check in with yourself. Just asking these questions internally, like the self-talk. What's shifted from when you began the practice? Do you feel like you're in a different state of mind? Your different quality thoughts or feelings? Maybe some new sensations or different awareness that's come up in your sensory motor image. It's like, oh, wow, I found I'm holding more tension in my shoulder than I thought I was. This expanded quality of awareness. And as you scan, all the while, so just let the breath run. So there's no leash for the breath to limit it. Let it do its thing. Can you shift into allowing the breath so that it's a happening? Watch the breath spill in, that you're in the embrace of the inhalation. There's no rush to take it, to take the breath. This ebb and flow. As you hit the peak of the inhalation, just let it drop. Effortless glide. As it falls slow motion to the bottom of the exhale, there's that beautiful transition period to not rush to the next breath, but wait for that true signal internally. Remember, your body knows what to do. You give it the space just to take the breath when it needs it. Not over breathing. Let the breath teach you patience, presence, the confidence, just by breathing in and out through your nose, that you are a self-regulator, a conscious captain of your own chemistry, that you regulate all through the way you breathe. Steady sweep, like a wave that builds on the inhale. And once you hit the top of your inhale, imagine your exhale is like dropping a pebble into the water. It breaks through the surface and starts to fall with the gravity down to the bottom. Let that pebble just settle onto the ocean floor. So you wait for that signal as the breath rounds the corner to take the next breath. Just another minute. Allow the integration process from your breathing. Just tune in, this curiosity around just what's possible for me. I can use my breath, all these tools to self-regulate and to steer myself towards learning, growth, and development. So, with this powerful toolkit that you were born with, what's possible for you today to step in, to realize and bring the dreams to reality, to get a little uncomfortable and train yourself into a new capacity, to awaken a new sense of potential that lives inside of you. All just by stepping over that edge, facing the fear, learning about the inner nature, that fear and the principles of the nervous system are all part of that process. So you can intimately begin this investigation, exploration of your inner nature and the relationship to outer nature. Let's take one last breath together, in through your nose, smooth and steady. Hold it at the top for a moment. Let it be like a breath cloak, it just covers you. Everything is connected within. And when you're ready, just let it go into slow motion as the breath drains to the bottom. And allow, just let yourself return back to your normal breathing. You stay where you are for a few more moments. There's no rush. Important to give yourself space coming out of a breathing session. Maybe you just press your heels into the floor, slowly begin to wiggle your toes and fingers. Just curious the way you open your eyes and look out to see the morning light or the daylight, the nature. If you'd like, turn onto one side, pause there for a moment. Just really slowly shifting. Not rushing to sit up or stand up too quickly. And with a sharpened awareness, even noticing as you do begin to move and shift to adjust your pillows, your positioning, notice what's showing up in the breath. How does it move? How can you reinforce this focus and awareness into breath as a way of being and regulating the breath, or restoring these positive breath patterns into every moment so that it's forgetting and then remembering. Forget, we remember. We fall, we stand up. Begin again. And yes, sometimes you do fall asleep in the breath practice. It does happen. Over time, as you practice, around the themes, especially in the studies, looking at breath as an opportunity to strengthen cognition, definitely notice that over time, focusing on one breath, the next breath, you expand that window of focus. So especially in the Wim Hof style, sometimes 30 breaths can seem daunting. And so then let's break it up. You can focus on one breath at a time, or do 10 breaths and then 10 more breaths and then 10 more. And there's that 30, so you can take your exhale hold. Just different ways of giving yourself space to really engage with it. And yeah, thanks for everybody hopping in the chat box here. If you do have a comment or an insight or just something you'd like to share with the group, you're welcome to jump in there. And just being sensitive on time for the whole experience here today, giving James a little bit of time as well, just to come up and out of the practice, and depending on where you're at with time, James, and if you're comfortable with that, to just have a short conclusion here, or any reflections as a group. So take your time, just coming back up to your seat, and thanks to everybody for the comments as they're coming in. Steve O.B., just to address this, I did record it, so since your names are on the list, I'll give the follow-up. And yeah, Steve, you got the book, baby. I love it. It's cool that the UK version was a different cover. Maybe that's one of the first questions.
Oh, I was muted. I said something really funny there, you guys, but now time has passed. That's how it is. Yeah, we could do some Q&A if anyone has anything specific. Do for a couple minutes, whatever people want to do. I'm sort of recovering from that great session, Sam. Thank you for that. Early in the morning, a whole different experience. So great.
Yeah, I think breathing in the morning is great. Just priming the body, and then so typically that's kind of the multidisciplinary framework that I've been exploring a lot of. There's days that I do just a Wim Hof style in the morning, like 5 rounds or sometimes 3. But getting the rhythm going. I mean, I'll use often the ball for fascia warm up to get the glide and everything. and
Sure.
then go into some box breath, into superventilation. And then that maximal minimal breathing has really been something that the group's been exploring a lot with, really provoking CO2 and playing with active versus passive inhales and exhales. So yeah, curious what that was. Hello.
Hey James, hey Samuel, hey everybody. I just wanted to share something real quick. That first time this has happened to me, and I've been with you every Saturday for about 4 months now, or however long.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like, and I've never given birth before. I don't have any children, but I felt like I was in the giving birth to something. Like it was just coming like really intensely, and I was thinking of the chthonic and the feminine energy or something, and it was just really powerful, and I just had to share that with y'all. So thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Teresa. It's always a pleasure to see you on here, and indeed every breathe can be different. You know, sometimes there is that powerful experience that you really feel on the inside, or maybe patterns or memories show up. So I always just love, in terms of insights and sharing, it's great to just have that open mind when you go into a breath practice. It's like, okay, well, what does my body need today? And the breath's going to give you what you need.
I have a question for James. First of all, thank you for writing it. Thank you for this discussion. I've really enjoyed it. So I have a bunch, but my first one will be, so all of us here, at least somewhat interested in breathing. And from the pulmonologist that I've spoken to, my dad's a surgeon and he has doctor friends. So I spoke with a pulmonologist and he said, he pretty much, I wanted him to read the book Breath before, but my dad was just like, call him. So I called him, had a discussion. And what it ended up with, if it works for you, it works for you, but it probably won't work for everyone, or in my practice, it hasn't. So my question is, if all of us in this video were to come together as a group and agree to either a new study or new evidence or something, what would your recommendation be so that we can all record it and as a group provide a larger database for other people to understand the importance of breathing?
Yeah, that's a good question. My father-in-law is a pulmonologist, so I've talked to the whole way through this entire process. And, you know, he explained to me, these are his words, not mine, that, you know, they're really good at cutting stuff out. Someone has a serious problem, that's where you want to go, you know, lung cancer, other issues with the injury to the lung, that's absolutely where you want to go. As far as the science is concerned, what I think is so interesting about breathing, you know, if something can be measured, it can be studied. If it can be studied, it can be proven right or wrong. So this is pretty easy stuff to study. We've got simple instruments, even a pulse ox, heart rate variability. You can look at a capnometer, and people have been studying this for a while. So it, you know, if you're getting into CAT scans and stuff, that's a little more in depth. But I just got a message from Robert, who I guess approves studies for the NIH, who says there is money in this stuff. Money is as far as grants for people studying it, which is so inspiring. And that is only a positive thing. So, you know, I wouldn't be the one to ask to how to set up a randomized controlled study. There's other people who do that. Huberman down at Stanford is doing that right now, sticking to the really strict scientific protocol. But again, I think what it comes down to is this is not as subjective. What people get out of breathing, subjective is one thing. Yeah, I feel better now. I'm relaxed. But what's happening in my body? What are the measurements saying? From what I've seen, no one really believes this stuff until they see those actual measurements, for good or for bad. And so I think more of those studies, specifically looking into the measurements of what happens to bodies in different states, I think would be really beneficial, because then it shows that it is universal, especially if you have a large group of subjects in the study.
Can I ask one more question just related to breath and deep? I just heard deep. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So with scuba diving, when you have your regulator, it goes through your mouth. do you think, I remember in breath and deep, you described nitric oxide and the increase through your nose. Do you think some of the negative effects associated with scuba diving may have to do with that all of the breaths you take are through your mouth? And do you think some of that can be combated if there was a regulator that went over your entire face, or at least your mouth and your nose, rather than just your mouth?
I don't think so, because a lot of, if you're talking the negative effects of scuba, you're talking about the bends, which is, you're talking about nitrogen, you know, getting into your bloodstream. And so mouth breathing, nasal breathing wouldn't have any difference there. I will say for breath holds and stuff, it'd be interesting to look at some studies between nasal breathing before a breath hold and mouth breathing before a breath hold while diving. I don't think anyone's done that, because it's basically impossible. If you're diving all the time, you have a mask on. And again, I'm not a hater of mouth breathing. Mouth breathing's great. It's just, as a habit, you want to breathe through your nose, and nitric oxide is one of the reasons for that. There's currently, I think, 17 different studies looking at giving nitric oxide to patients who have severe COVID symptoms. We make a lot of nitric oxide right here, and if we hum, we can increase that 15-fold by humming. And there's this crazy study that I read. This guy had chronic sinusitis. I'm not saying everyone with chronic sinusitis go out and do this. This is his experience. And he hummed 4 times a day for like, 5 or 10 minutes a day, was able to completely clear up his nose. And if you look at the principles of this, it's, what does nitric oxide do? It attacks bacteria, it attacks viruses. It's a great vasodilator. So the principle of that, I thought, was really interesting. And what are the cool thing about that too is, what are the side effects? You're going to annoy someone next to you humming 4 times a day, but beyond that, like, what do you have to lose? So next time, if someone has chronic sinusitis, try to do that, because and let me know, because I'm just curious. And that would be a great thing to study as well, to take like a quarter of the population has chronic sinusitis. Why not get 10 of them to try this? And again, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but what do you have to lose? So.
One last comment on that. Just I read another study where they had 9 people tested for nasal exhalation and mouth exhalation, and it determined 42% more water was lost through mouth exhalation.
Right.
So in my recent running and kickboxing, whatever I've been doing, just exclusively nose breathing, I sweat way more, which I think is related to the evolutionary benefit of sweating. That can also be, you can lose the water through mouth breathing or sweating, but I feel more powerful and better, less fatigued when I do nose breathing.
Yeah, I mean, you can see gyms aren't open now, at least not here in San Francisco, but
Florida,
you see
they
people
are
jogging around, and you're losing 40% more moisture. And so now, people are wearing those belts with like the 7 different water bottles on. I think, which is fine, but I think you could save yourself from wearing that thing if you breathe through your nose and exhale through your nose.
Yeah. I welcome everybody to jump in on that and explore, because I do a lot of cycling, and I do a nasal only ride sometimes. If I push harder someday, I'm gonna shift gears and open my mouth to move that CO2 when I need to, intentionally. But I've noticed I'll have a water bottle with me, but I'm out on a 2.5-hour ride, and it's been quite hot here, and I don't even get thirsty. And if you focus just on that nasal flow, like Brian was just sharing about, it's super cool. And then that nitric oxide piggyback into it all is putting you right in that sweet spot. So
yeah. And again, this is stuff that's measurable. So it's been measured. So it's not a psychosomatic effect, which is exciting,
Yeah. Great. Well, there's a lot of questions. I know one that did come up, and I want to give you a moment, James.
Sure.
I acknowledge your time as well if you got to jump soon. But one, just curious, underlying the Rogan Experience. So you were on last week with Joe Rogan, which was another massive part of the breath wave here, and just so cool to see it making its ripples into the mainstream. And yeah, curious to just hear what that experience was like, or how it all came together, and any shares you have about that.
Yeah. So they called up, and of course, when he calls, you want to go down in there and do it. I used to love traveling to LA, but there's a pandemic now, and so traveling. I don't know if anyone has been traveling lately. It's awful. So I live in San Francisco, so I had to drive down there and pack all my food in big coolers like I was going camping. I stayed in the back of a friend's house. He has an in-law unit that he hadn't been in weeks, and went down there day and came back. But he's think what you want about Joe. The guy shows up, he does his work. He's really into this stuff. And what was even better after that experience, I was so tired during that talk. I was just trying to be coherent because I had just driven down there. But we've stayed in contact since then, and we're exchanging all this breathing information. And you know, he's the real deal. He does this stuff. He doesn't just talk about it. And to me, it's an amazing experience to talk to a host of a program who's actually read the book, because you'd be surprised that usually they get the PR sheet and they just go through the bullet points, which is why all my responses are the same on all these interviews. So he was really taking it into left field, as I knew he would, you know, and it was great. So we're still in touch, and who knows, maybe I'll be on there again. I would love to go on there with one of the researchers, with Huberman, who is doing not only the one study looking into sighing, but a bunch of other stuff that is very, very interesting, which is right up my alley. So, and he's a local guy. He's at Stanford. I talk with him all the time. So we're hopefully going to be pushing things forward in some other weird ways coming up soon. Yes.
Yeah. And actually what was so cool, it was like how timely within firstly this book coming out in this time, but then after, like the week after, or a few days after your Joe Rogan episode, Huberman was on there as well. So It's like all these things are just interconnecting, and you know, he's been such a great advisor, and I really love the work he's doing. I know, I think as well, there's the company Whoop, which is based out of Boston, the wearable. They're integrating respiratory frequency and doing some studies with him. So keep an eye out, everybody. There's a lot happening. And so maybe one last question, or if you have any final comments or remarks, James, I'll happy to turn it over to you.
Sure, we'll do one more. I got to hop to the farmer's market here in a little bit, get my food. But let's do one more. Anyone have one? I mean, there's a lot here. I can't read through all these, but if someone has one,
just a quick question. One second. Go ahead. Stop back off. I have a question about just that I found fascinating in the book, the 5.5 breaths per inhaling and exhaling, and how that breaks down over 5.5 times per minute. But the idea of a liter of breath in, is that as a reasonable amount of air to take in? Is that true with exercise as well? Is that what we're aspiring to? No pun intended.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, you want to be taking longer, deeper breaths exercising, and you can immediately see this. I did a bunch of work on stationary bikes, looking at heart rate variability, looking at pulse oximetry, looking at CO2, and it is so much more efficient breathing through the nose and taking these long cycles of air. I'm sure if you're cycling, you can experience this as well. I think the important thing is, you know, there's sometimes when you're really entering into zone 3, zone 4, where your breath is going to probably be a little less than that. But what I've found in my own personal experience is those longer, deeper breaths, especially when exercising, are really beneficial, especially when it's consistent exercise. If you're doing martial arts or boxing, it's harder because sometimes are much more intense than there are at other times. But cycling, when you're doing the same thing over and over and over, I found I was able to get my respiratory rate down to about 6 to 8 breaths a minute, which sounds which is about a third or a fourth of what it should be. And I kept thinking, there's no way I have enough oxygen here. But if those breaths are big enough, my O2 was either the same or it was going up. breathing at that rate. So it was that CO2 which was peaking, which was bringing all this warmth and circulation. That's what made it difficult. So I guess I'm not a trainer, but from what I've learned from these people, that these longer, deeper breaths and what you're doing, exercising and in all life, you know, it's a good way to go. And we'll end on a quote from BKS Iyengar, which I thought was pretty. I'm going to totally corrupt this and get it wrong, but the gist is, you know, a yogi's life is not determined by the number of his days, but by the number of his heartbeats. And I think that relates to breaths as well. You know, what's a way of retaining a low heart rate? And we know people with lower resting heart rates live longer lives. What's a way of doing that? Which is to breathe slowly and to breathe less. And I think that's great advice, especially now.
Nailing it on the head. James,
there we go.
Thanks so much for your time. I'll let you get ready for the farmer's market, but really appreciate your contribution to this whole field and the community and engaging conversation. I enjoyed this time with everybody here. So thanks to everybody as well for joining, and stay tuned. We'll get some follow-up info. If you have questions, you know where to find James, Mr. James Nestor on Instagram, and the website, mrjamesnestor.com, right?
That's it. Yeah. Some jerk took James Nestor, which is why I had to put the MR in front, but that's how it goes, you know. It's
official.
Yeah.
And yeah, would love to connect you with Jill also to talk about the gorgeous balls and fascia stuff. And so keep spinning the webs and bringing everyone together.
Awesome.
So,
great, you guys. Thanks so much, everybody. Breathe well, be well. Gonna hop on my bike. Take care.
Safe travels, James. Thank you. And so for everybody who's still here, I'm going to just do the giveaway because that was on the list. So if I know a few people jumped off, I'm going to pull up a random number generator, and I have the roster with everybody, and I'm just going to announce those two names. So the first giveaway that we're doing, I put out a 60-minute one-on-one session that we can schedule together at any time. So I'm just doing a random number, and then it's pulling from the Excel spreadsheet. So we'll go for the auctioning of the one-on-one session first, and then the second prize is a month subscription to Our Breath Collective, which is a platform that my close friends and colleagues in Encinitas, California founded. I guide sessions on there, and it's Monday through Friday live guided breathes. And so that second prize will be a free month for you to try it out, to join the crew. Yes, the question here, everything is recorded, so I will be uploading this at some point later today. And you'll be able to watch it again or do the breathe. So let's go for the giveaway, moment of truth. Everybody ready? Yeah, Dave B, my man. Okay, so I'm pulling the generator, number 133. So scroll my list, number 133. Hey, Mary Pulaski. Or maybe you put a typo in that it's Maria. So Maria, I'll mark that down. I'll be in touch with you via email. And so that was for the one-on-one. And I will do a random generator now for Our Breath Collective. And that's 181. So that is Jason Gilmartin. He's a pretty regular crew member on our Saturday session, so happy to see your name take that, or a familiar face. So you just want a free month subscription to Our Breath Collective, and we'll get you sorted with all that at some point following the session today. So that's that on the giveaway, everybody. And really would just like to take a moment again to thank you all for being here. It's such a treat to share this time together and to open up our regular Saturday session to just bring in a special guest, James, and we'll continue these every Saturday. So for those that haven't joined us before, 10 a.m. every Saturday, I lead a it's more a more lengthy breathing session. They tend to be about an hour long, and always exploring different things and themes within the weeks. So if you're interested, you can go to samuelwhiting.com, and under my programs tab, there is a sign up. It's a reoccurring link, so you just save it. It's for free. It's a donation-based class. My aim is to make this all accessible to as many people as possible, and really see this community grow and empower each other to be the best, most powerful, resilient humans that we can be. So much love to all of you, and really appreciate this global community. So hope you have an awesome weekend, and feel free to reach out if you want to share anything. Thanks for all the comments here. I'm just scrolling through. Such a treat. Yeah, if you have Instagram and you like doing that, it's @whiting_energy. That's my page. I'll include it in the follow-up. We'll get some additional resources and stuff. But that's it for now. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully see you next weekend, or we'll connect via Instagram or email. So peace, love, smooth breaths, as I like to say. Yeah, Paula, you know it. I'm going to stop the recording, and then